Welcome to episode 5 of Malaise. Our first match is going to be between Chrom and Pichu. And it looks like we're going to be on Lilat for this one. So, quick recap for anybody who may have forgotten, especially because it's been a bit. I may have forgotten to export the previous video on time, so sorry for the big gaps in the release schedule. I mean, you could probably tell that already. It's called May Malaise, and it's gonna wrap up in June. Again. So, as for the quick recap, we have 4 amiibo left. That means that all of the amiibo remaining are going to be retrained. So, this match doesn't really have much stakes on the line, except that it just gives the amiibo a chance to prove that they're not the lowest performing amiibo of the year, I suppose. Also, because this is the final 4, it's going to be a best of 3. So, between Chrom and Pichu here, we're going to have one match guaranteed, second match guaranteed, unless the same amiibo wins both matches, then we're going to have a third match as well. And that third match would be the tiebreaker. If there isn't a tiebreaker, then it means one amiibo won twice in a row, which is starting to look like Pichu, because Pichu's doing a great job of getting Chrom off stage and watching him die. Especially since the Chrom amiibo strength has usually been catching opponents with his recovery, and Pichu is just not letting that happen. A little bit of damage trade there. Pichu's able to make that back easily. Pichu using a lot of Thunder Jolts right there? I think that's the name. Pikachu and Pichu have a different name for their neutral special, even though it behaves mostly the same. Chrom going dangerously off stage and killing himself, actually. Alright. Don't know why he did that. Made this match go a lot shorter, though. That brings us to our second match, which is going to be between Chrom and Pichu. Gonna be on pilot wings for this one. Pichu laying out the combo, getting 3 up smashes, 4 up smashes in a row on Chrom, and a trade, dealing a lot of damage very fast. Pichu is supposed to be kind of explosive character in that way. You gotta think of Pichu as, oh wow, that spike already took the first stock. That was under 30 seconds. So you can kind of think of Pichu as a high-octane Pikachu. So Pichu is smaller and harder to hit. I don't know for any definitive value if any of Pichu's moves are stronger than Pikachu's. But even if they're the exact same strength, Pichu being a much smaller character basically means that Pichu gets to hit above his weight class, if that makes sense. That's actually usually how the lightweight characters tend to go in Smash Brothers. Either they have a lot of extensive combos, which isn't really great for new players, so they kind of shy away from that. Really the only exception being Sheik that I can think of. So instead the lightweight characters... Alright, Pichu did get clipped by the recovery there, but Chrom also died. So for Pichu that was actually a worthwhile trade. Chrom didn't have too much of a choice. So the light characters hit harder than you would expect someone for their size to hit, with the main drawback of the character being that they die early from everyone else as well. It's a little weird to say in that if everyone has a high attack and low defense, then, you know, what's the point of it all? Especially when you get, for example, a small lightweight character like Pichu against maybe a heavyweight who's supposed to live longer than normal, but also still while hitting hard. Yeah, there are some intricacies there, but they can be, well, first of all, kind of hard to explain. Especially with all the mechanics that there are in Smash Ultimate, it can be difficult to understand all of them all at once. Just some of them, I feel like, I forget on a daily basis. For example, how to DI attacks? I know the basic fundamentals of that. However, you know, people still DI attacked wrong, me included. Pichu did get Chrom spiked. However, Pichu was at a pretty good percent, and Chrom's now very much within kill. As long as this doesn't kill Pichu first, which it narrowly avoided not doing. A singular jab just to destroy Roy's confidence, and a taunt. Gonna be difficult to train that out. I'm going to try. And Chrom's not able to recover from that, which means that Pichu won both matches, which means Chrom is going to be moving on to the finals match. And for this match, we're going to be having Ken against Sheik. Going to be on, Jungle Japes, I believe. Ooh, that might be the other Donkey Kong stage. It can be difficult to know all the names of all the stages. Maybe this is, I think this is Congo Falls, actually. Gonna have to double check that one later. Ken double jumping out of danger. So if it works, it's great. I will warn you, and this applies for any character, not just Ken, by the way, that if you use your double jump to get out of any sort of combo, and your opponent just kind of hits you out of your double jump, assuming that you don't have, you know, like 4 extra double jumps, then you no longer have that double jump to recover with. I've gotten a lot of really grimy kills on people who like to double jump out of things, and I catch their landing with, with a move like a forward air, puts them off stage, and they have enough space to recover, but they assume that they have a double jump that they don't have. Is Sheik making it to the rock? Almost killing Ken, but not. So the opponent will think they have a double jump, and then they will realize too late that they don't have a double jump, and then they will die because they didn't use all of their recovery fast enough, if that makes sense. Oftentimes when people are, I don't know, double jumping to center stage, they mentally think they don't need to keep track of their double jump status anymore, and that's kind of where you get them. Ken air dodging to the rock. I always wonder with the amiibo because they always have a slight chance of missing. Granted, human players aren't much different in that respect, but the amiibo very aggressively go off stage near the rock. Ken uses double jump there, getting gimped by Sheik. Things aren't looking great for Ken all of a sudden. Already getting the first stock taken wasn't great for him, but losing the second stock so early. Sheik just loves playing around this rock for some reason. Many lives have been lost because of this rock. It hasn't quite been problematic enough to warrant the stage getting taken out of the stage list. But I suppose now that Norfair is gone, which was from a previous episode, if you didn't catch that, that might actually mean that this stage would be potentially next. Usually we don't eliminate a stage unless there are massive amiibo AI breaking behaviors. Pretty much some stages just make certain amiibo just kind of stand still for like 5 seconds, so it's that what we're trying to avoid. The preseason and postseason, we get to be a little bit more open with the available stages, just for the sake of variety. And it also does help vary up some of the matches. Already, depending on what characters you are on what stage, having a different stage can change how a matchup goes. For example, if you could think of a very long stage, well, basically just the tunnel stage, anybody with a projectile would be really great, because you can't jump over any of the projectiles. Now, no such stage exists in the game, but there are lesser variations. Stuff like how many platforms there are, the positioning of the platforms. Some stages have higher up platforms than others. If a platform's too high, or say your your up smash to reach while you're standing on the ground, that stage is just a little bit worse for you because your platform pressure becomes a lot harder to pull off. Ken having a hard time landing a hit on Sheik, probably because she loves playing in the lower blast zone around the rock. Does get a forward air, and Ken barely grabs the ledge. He almost overextended to get that kill. And that might be his death. Sheik might have saved him. No, she did not. So that means that Sheik's going to win the first round. And for this match, we're going to be having Ken against Sheik. Going to be on green greens for this one. So this is a hazards offstage list, in case you didn't know, which means we're not going to be having any of the following blocks. Also, I believe it means Wispy Woods isn't going to drop apples or blow players in any particular direction, or at all, really. This being a little bit more of a standard-like stage layout, and Ken got tripped up by the bottom side of the platform. That is very unfortunate for Ken. Not again. Oh, okay. Ken survived that time, but he is now at a huge stock deficit. And it is actually going to be a little bit of a problem for Ken. So how he got stuck on the bottom of the side of the platform there is actually he went for his up special, and it moves you forward a little bit. Most up specials do in some way, shape, or form. However, most stages will have slanted corners at the edge, which means if you rise up into them, basically your upwards velocity continues to happen, whereas your sideways velocity gets stopped by the stage. And because the slope curves towards the ledge, you just naturally get sloped up to the ledge. It's... I guess I have to call it basic video game physics, because that's how most games work. If you're not recoiling off the wall, then if you have some sort of movement, you just kind of glide across it. But Ken can't do that when the bottom of the stage is a 90-degree angle. And if he ends up just under it, that just kind of bricks his entire recovery. Meanwhile, Sheik's up special puts her... Well, first of all, it's a short-range teleportation. So there's that to consider. But it's effectively just a straight line, which means this probably won't be a problem. Also, Sheik gets a wall jump. Actually, even a wall cling, but that doesn't come up as much. But it does mean that when placed against a wall, Sheik actually recovering to the wrong side of the platform. There are ledges there. You actually won't want to recover there during a normal match. Well, sorry, during a in a casual match, I should say. Because if there are falling blocks and a falling block falls down as you're trying to recover, it basically just removes the ledge. Ken going super low, able to get damage off on Sheik though. Not quite getting the kill. Sheik seems to be really liking this stage because she can just keep chaining forward airs together. I guess because the stage is longer, it just sort of works out that way. And with the uneven heights of the platforms. If it wasn't for the two holes on the sides of the stage, it actually would be a pretty good tournament stage, I believe. Unfortunately, I'm sure there's some character who would be disadvantaged by effectively having a hill in the middle. Already anybody with projectiles would not like the platform arrangement. Bouncing fish off the wall there. Interesting recovery. Ken air dodging through the forward and actually making it back to the ledge. And Sheik somehow not falling into the hole after that recovery. Alright, so now both characters are seeming to have a hard time out-damaging the auto heal. They're getting a whole bunch of one-off hits on each other. And I think the damage is slowly going up just because it's really hard to auto-heal any sort of damage in Smash Ultimate. Already there's only about 5-ish characters who have ways of healing. Yeah, you know what, I'd say maybe 10-ish characters, but only 5 of those can do it on their own. Some of the methods require stuff like your opponent to help out. And they don't want out healing your opponent trying to damage you to be a viable strategy, which is understandable because that would be miserable. And auto heal kind of follows the same principle. If it was any stronger, it would be semi-impossible to kill anyone, just because they would be out healing your damage faster than you can deal it. Of course, I feel like some characters would have a much easier time outpacing it than others. Unnecessary back air from Sheik does secure the kill on Ken. Now, the amiibo have about 3 minutes left. Ken needs to take 2 stocks. Sheik only needs to take 1. Problem being is that Sheik took the first stock by Ken accidentally killing himself. And Ken's only taken 1 stock. Alright, Sheik just returned the favor. Both amiibo now have 1 stock to take and about 3 minutes to do so. Before we go to super sudden death, and then it's effectively a coin flip at that point. Technically, a character like Sheik would have an easier time because she's faster and more likely to get the first hit in. However, there are some characters who have some moves that won't kill even at 300%. And it's not super well documented because, first of all, in normal tournament play, they ignore super sudden death completely, which I think is kind of a shame. I think it would actually help fix the camping problem, because how most tournaments do it is they actually gauge your percentage difference at the end of the match, which can also be really tough if you accidentally forgot to check and you're not actually recording the match. But that means that if you have a 17% lead on the opponent and you're trying to wait out the time, if you were to instead go for super sudden death, then it wouldn't even be guaranteed. You would still have that last minute scramble to see who can land the next hit, which I think would reduce camping just a little bit. I know why professionals don't like it, because it is effectively luck based in who lands the first hit, and of course there's a chance you get a bomb dropped on your head and there's only so much you can do about that. And if there's anything that professionals of anything don't like, is any sort of RNG predicting the winner. It's, for example, why chess has such a competitive scene, because there's pretty much no randomness in chess. I suppose depending on who wins the coin flip to see who goes first, but even then I'm pretty sure tournaments have rules to make that more fair. Ken getting jab, jab, nothing. Hate to see it. And most fighting games actually have a best out of 3 or best out of 5 rule set for the base matches, just to make sure that you can't randomly get a game up on your opponent. I suppose it would mean you'd have to randomly get 2 or 3 games up on your opponent, but that is a lot less likely, especially if you're pulling a random gimmick out of nowhere. But I suppose it would be possible still. Pretty much the only reason they don't do best of 19s at every single tournament is because people need to go home at some point, and they can't afford to spend 17 hours at a tournament venue. Alright, 10 seconds left, and Sheik's at kill percent, and Ken just isn't. Oh, Sheik starts out a combo, probably trying to use it to run out the time. Back throw's not going to be killing. We're going to super sudden death. First time this year, I believe. Unless there was one last episode I forgot. Ken landing a forward air to secure the second match. Yep, you may have forgotten. We've got one more match, because Sheik won the first one, Ken wins the second one. And for this match, we're going to be having Ken against Sheik. I know, big surprise. Going to be on the Fire Emblem Coliseum stage? Ooh, I'm actually getting real bad with the names this episode. Something I always hate to say, because it means that while editing I have to go back and correct any misinformation I might be accidentally spreading. Actually, quite a bit of editing goes into making sure all of my little vocal blems and random noises that get picked up by the microphone don't make it into the video. There are settings that negate those pretty massively. It actually has sped up the actual editing time, because I used to just take the raw audio and I'd have to process everything myself, and that just took longer. Turns out there's just settings you can do to turn off a lot of the background noise. Not everything, of course. The microphone is still trying to actually record your voice. However, things like the one that actually comes up the most is me breathing. And obviously I can't stop that, and I'm a little surprised some of it still gets picked up by the microphone. So between that and sometimes I'll stumble over my words, I have to edit that out too. I guess I don't have to, but if it bugs me while I'm editing it, I'm pretty sure it'll bug people while they're watching it. At some point, people are going to start watching these in, I guess I'd call it podcast mode, which I don't think is a feature YouTube has. But you can always just play a video and then not watch the actual video as it's playing. I think that's a valid way to watch this. I mean, then it does effectively become just listening to an audio commentary about a match you're not watching. But if someone finds joy out of it, I'm not going to stop them. I guess I actually couldn't stop them if I wanted to, but I don't want to stop them. I guess it would just mean that any of the visual corrections, because sometimes I will make a mistake, for example, naming a stage, and I'll put the correct name of the stage on the screen. So if you're only listening to the audio, you wouldn't catch those, which I guess would be unfortunate, but also I suppose if you're not watching, then you wouldn't know that I got the stage name wrong anyway. Unless I got it, like, really wrong, but that would be pretty tough. Up smash, taking the first stock. Normally Sheik would have to confirm into that in some way, shape, or form, but she just kind of got a random one, and especially because they were so high up to the screen, and I think Sheik even got the sweet spot. Now, Ken did fall out of a combo with a forward air. Oh, Sheik going for another up smash, but Ken had a shield. Following off stage, Ken just barely reaching the ledge there. You can actually see, we were talking about last match, how stages will have the sloped edges, which helps recovering. It also helps since you have more timings that you can actually reach the ledge in most cases. So it does give you more options in terms of recovery timing. And it actually does get a lot of players, because some stages, especially custom stages, won't have those slopes, and then some characters forget, some players, I mean, forget how to recover. Which I get, not everybody has enough time to try to become a pro at this game. I mean, there's so much to learn. At most events of any sort I go to, I don't go to actual tournament events, but any sort of casual event, I'm usually the best player there, just because I play this game a lot more than everyone else. Although, weirdly enough, everyone else seems to, well, not everyone, but most other people seem to pride themselves on it more. Ken struggling to land a hit. Sheik kind of was too, but being the more agile character, Sheik's more in control of that situation. Ken being less agile, since this stage, I guess I'd call it transformation, is more of a, I don't know what to call it, I guess more of a jungle gym than most of the other stages. Being able to move to the other side of it faster is obviously beneficial. I guess you could say that about any stage. However, Ken is working off of Street Fighter movement, and Street Fighter is a fighting game where, so there is movement in it, but it's on a much smaller scale, if that makes sense. All I can explain is that the camera's always more zoomed in on the characters. So even though characters in Street Fighter definitely move slower than in Smash Brothers, it's fine because the stages are smaller, there's less you need to move, if that makes sense. Sheik with a great edge guard. I don't know if the last back air was actually necessary, but she did get it. So Ken is working on movement, working with movement from a game where all the stages are flat and you don't need to really run anywhere. And they actually did stay true to his character for Smash Brothers. That is something I very much admire about how Sakurai adapts all the characters. While it may not be an exact one-to-one comparison, they always kind of feel like they do from at least one of their games. Of course, some characters don't have 2D platforming games. There are, you know, other genres of games around there. Out there, I should say. But even then, they feel in some way, shape, or form how they actually do from any way you can control them effectively. I mean, some characters like Ness, Sakurai had to take a little bit more creative liberties with, because as an RPG, you just kind of walk around and talk to people. That's the most movement you get. Ken not able to recover in time, not grabbing the ledge. That means that Sheik's going to win the third match, which means Ken has to fight in the finals, which is going to be next episode. So stay tuned for that. Until then, bye.